Hello and welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi. My name is Matt.
And my name is James.
This week we are on episode 9 of our journey in space. We are deep in space.
Yeah, deep out in space.
But we're looking at films that no matter how deep into space they go, they've still got their eye on the rear view mirror. They're looking behind them. They're looking back into the past, right?
Yes, they've got a connection to history,
Yeah.
these two films which we're looking at today, don't they?
It's history in space.
Ooh. I like making that sound on the podcast. I've done that a few times now.
Yeah, it's good. It works.
It's my space sound. We're in space. Woo!
So the first film we're looking at is from 1994, directed by Roland Emmerich. It's Stargate, the beginning of a huge media franchise that I'm not super familiar with beyond this film. And then after that, we're going to be talking about Darren Aronofsky's poetic, weird masterpiece, The Fountain, from 2006.
Yeah, two great films with connections to history this time round.
Yeah, and very different approaches to that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird pairing, I've got to say.
Yeah, two films that approach history and space travel together, but they're looking at them in very different ways, through different lenses, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, shall we start with the mid-90s classic sci-fi, kind of schlocky blockbuster Stargate?
Yes, please.
It has been buried for thousands of years. A mystery. A secret. A threshold to the future.
Where'd you find this? I've never seen anything like this.
One man will break the code and open the door.
Well, you should read Stargate. I've been in front of us the whole time.
The other will lead the way.
Why are you here?
I'm here in case you succeed.
Jackson's identify the seventh symbol.
Backup storage, reserve power, on.
So what do you remember about this film? How old were we? About 6, right?
Yeah, we would have been really young.
But it's really stamped in my memory from that age.
I have such distinctive memories of this film, and certain bits have just really stuck in my head.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, even just from the intro, that beginning bit when you see the sort of the heads.
Yep.
What would you call that?
Head.
Just the heads, the Egyptian heads of King Tut
Yeah.
or something like that. It's
Well, it must be Ra, right?
yeah,
Presumably.
of Ra.
Yeah.
But that's the first bit that I remember. But so I've not told you about this before, I don't think. But
Okay.
when I was in primary school, I did this thing where I would get up really early, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would try and watch a film before I went to school.
In primary school?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was one of the ones we had recorded off of the TV.
Okay.
So this was in my rotation of films that I would try and watch before I went to school.
And when you say rotation, as in you watched it quite often?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And I had this thing where I was like, oh, if I get up early enough, I can watch an entire film and then go to school.
Oh, that's adorable. That's so nice.
So Stargate is ingrained in my memory because of that.
So that's when you're 8, 9, 10 years old sort of age.
Yeah. And I didn't always get to see the whole bit of the film.
Do you want to tell me what some of the other ones were, or do you want to wait until we might cover them in the series?
We might cover them in the series.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, there were some weird ones. Basically, anything you could tape off the TV, which was half good,
Yeah.
I would have watched 100 times before I went to school.
Nice. I mean, my dad did that as well. We had 100 or more, taped films, but I wasn't. I've never been an early riser, so that's not in my remit. I remember. I have a feeling that this film had, for some reason, I think it would have had full page ads in the Beano, because I remember seeing ads. But that doesn't seem right, does it? Because it wouldn't be appropriate to advertise this film in a kid's comic.
It's a PG though, isn't it?
Okay, so maybe it did.
Yeah.
I remember being I was targeted with advertising for this film in some way. And the thing that and I didn't see it for years. We didn't go to the cinema or anything, but I remember it's the helmets that they wear that kind of disappear into their necks, that like Anubis or Horus helmets. I just thought they were so cool, and the way they like shutter down and disappear.
I know. It looks a little bit less cool now you look at it from today's perspective.
Because it's very animated.
Yeah, and the frame rate's a little bit off.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first saw that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, their helmets are like crazy technology. Yeah, loved it.
And that stood out to me more when I was a little kid. I think now the actual Stargate itself, the way it switches on, the watery surface, that's the more iconic image of this film.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So what did you think? So how is it coming back? How long ago? So you were watching this every 3 weeks when you were a little kid. And then what's the gap? Like how recently had you seen it?
I have not seen it for years.
Oh, that's lovely to come back to.
Years and years. Yeah, I don't think I haven't watched it since I was watching it on an old VHS.
Right, wow.
So I had not seen it in this kind of quality.
Right.
So that was quite nice.
That's, okay, so you know this film really well, because I want to talk about, I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
Hadn't seen it in years, but it is one of the most frustrating viewing experiences I've had, certainly doing this series.
It does not make sense.
No, I mean like literally my access to the film.
Oh, of course,
It's an absolute nightmare. So so I'm signed up for a free trial of Amazon Prime for various reasons. I didn't really want to become a member of that, but it's looking like if I'm going to want to watch Picard,
they're all there.
I'm going to have to do it. Yeah. So I signed up for a free trial of that for The Fountain, which we'll talk about later. And then I tried to watch Stargate on that, but you have to sign up for another free trial to MGM Movies.
Yes, that's what I ended up having to do.
Right. Fine. So I've done that. And then as I get through the film, that copy doesn't have subtitles when there should be subtitles. And I don't know which bits are supposed to have subtitles, but definitely there's a scene where Daniel has a full-on conversation with Ra in the Egyptian dialect.
Yep.
And there's no subtitles on the copy that I'm watching. And I'm like, this is mad. This is a
like,
full-on
what's
conversation.
Going on?
Yeah. And I also think that, well, you would know better because you know this film really well.
Yeah.
I could tell that was supposed to be subtitled, but then I thought, are all the other, when he's talking to like his girlfriend, is that supposed to be subtitled?
Bits of it are. So from what I remember, the bits with Dr. Jackson and Shiori, those were subtitled when it's just the two of them talking.
Yeah, because there's a point where Daniel works out the language.
Yeah.
And I think from that point on, when Daniel's having a conversation, it should be subtitled, right?
Yeah. So there's bits like that. And then there's obviously the big conversation that he has with Ra.
Yeah.
When they're talking about the nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. That was all subtitled.
I mean, to be fair, Daniel then explains the conversation to O'Neill.
Yeah.
So you don't really lose anything, but I was very annoyed. So I'm like, so I get my laptop out because I've signed up for this MGM trial on my PlayStation Amazon app. I get my laptop out and I'm like, oh, maybe it'll work better on my computer. Load up Amazon on there, and I don't have the MGM trial on my laptop. And long story short, I realized that because I bought my PlayStation secondhand, I think the person who used to own it has left their Amazon account signed in. And I've never noticed before because I've never opened that app. So if by any fluke of luck chance the person who used to own my PlayStation is listening, you're going to be charged £5 a month to watch MGM movies from next week onwards. And I'm sorry, I tried to cancel it. And I tried to find out the email of the owner and I can't work it out. So it's just there now. So I'm sorry about that. But I didn't want to do the MGM trial on my computer. So I ended up getting just like YouTube clips of Ra talking.
Yep.
But I couldn't find any clips of anyone else. It was just the Ra
That's
scenes.
just the main bit, which is out there.
Yeah, so I watched that. Anyway, frustrating.
Yeah.
Really frustrating movie watching experience.
So I think in the initial viewings of that film as well, they didn't have subtitles on those bits.
Oh, right, okay.
And that confused audiences. So they put those subtitles in to explain bits of the story more afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
And they also did stuff like they made Ra's eyes glow.
It's not a great effect, though.
Yeah, and they did the bit, when he dies at the end. I know I'm jumping massively to the end.
Yeah.
Spoiler, he died at the end.
Bad guy dies.
Yeah. You see his alien face. So that was added in as well after the first viewings.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's not necessary.
Yeah, but it was, I think audiences weren't getting all of that stuff that he was an alien. I don't know how, because it's quite blatant throughout the film and the storytelling of it.
And he's the bad guy. Who
Yeah,
cares? He's
exactly.
obviously the bad guy. It doesn't matter what he is.
But I found it interesting that they didn't have subtitles initially as well.
Definitely that scene, I mean, it's just boring without subtitles. It's like a 3 or 4 minute scene of a conversation and nothing else is happening apart from a conversation. If you don't know what's going on.
I was having a few beers when I was watching it as well, so that kind of made it a little bit better. Because I think if I'd been watching it completely sober, I would have been so frustrated. I just wouldn't have been able to handle it.
Yeah. That was me. Did you get into, were you ever into SG1?
Yeah, I watched SG1.
I watched a lot of SG1, but I never finished it. And then I didn't watch the other spin-offs.
Yeah, it was on loads. Was it Channel 4?
Yeah, Channel 4 had it when we were young.
Yeah. Because SG1, it has like 200 episodes plus.
It's
or
really
something.
long. It's 10 or 11 seasons.
And then they did Stargate Atlantis, and they did Stargate Universe, which was really good.
Was it?
Yeah, because they were Stargate Universe was set to be the new Battlestar after Battlestar finished. Because I think some of the creators were involved or something, or it might have been writers, I'm not 100% sure. But it was supposed to be dark and edgy and a new sort of retelling of the Stargate story.
Oh.
And then it just got cancelled after the first series, I think it was.
Well, that's tricky, isn't it? Because SG1 is not dark and edgy. It's a fun, it's like kind of Xena Warrior Princess kind of romp,
it's in that sort of bracket, isn't it?
So it's tough to try and sell the dark, edgy show. Tough to sell BSG to the audience that is already primed for SG1.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a shame. Bit of a miss. But SG1 was great. And it's all on Prime. And now I've got Prime, I might be going straight into that.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it. It's just an easy watch and you can just get stuck into it. It's a new story every time, pretty much.
Yeah.
And they expand on the mythology of this and they kind of reinvent certain things.
Well, they totally reinvent the enemies, don't they? Because they're not called the Goa'uld in this film.
No.
And in the series, they're like little parasitic slugs, aren't they? That like go in the belly and then take control of the mind.
Yeah.
Whereas Ra in this he's like a grey, isn't he?
Yeah, he's more like that, isn't he?
Which seems to be living inside the body, as confirmed by that scene.
Yeah,
that he
he's
just
like
said is
possessed
added
by
in.
some light, isn't he?
Yeah, weird.
So this film was directed by Roland Emmerich.
Yeah.
What do you know about his past films? Their sort of rise to fame.
They all look the same, right?
They've all got very similar aspects.
There's a feel to a Roland Emmerich film
Yeah.
that is like quite definitive of a 90s sci-fi blockbuster, isn't it? This film looks exactly like Independence Day, the way it's shot. I don't know if it's the same director of photography as well, but...
Same composer.
Is it?
Yeah.
Who's the composer?
So the composer is a guy called David Arnold.
Okay.
And this...
He's British, I think.
Yeah, he's
I've
British.
Heard him on... I've heard him guest on a few comedy podcasts.
Oh, really?
He's friends with comedians, I think, because he's definitely
Amazing.
He's on the Horn section, which is Alex Horn's podcast, and I think he was on James Acaster and Ed Gamble's food podcast, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because this was his first big film. Before this, he'd done a few short films, composing music for that, and one feature. And he was just working at a record store or something in England. And then, I don't know exactly how it happened, but he got involved in the film. Roland Emmerich got him on board, and they were a little bit dubious about having him. But yeah, he just sat in a hotel room, composed all of this crazy music, because the soundtrack for this is epic.
It is, yeah. It captures the kind of scope of ancientness and space travel.
It's got all of that ancient element, and it's a bit sort of Close Encounters. It's a bit Indiana Jones. It's a bit Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, there's a lot of tones that he has to straddle across in the soundtrack to hold this film together.
Yeah, and off the back of this, he obviously got involved in Independence Day. He did Godzilla, the music for that. And I think he did a few of the Bond films as well.
I think he might have done Skyfall.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
Some homegrown talent. So what are Emmerich's other big hits? You just mentioned Godzilla and Independence Day. I've seen both of them. I love Godzilla. I don't care what anyone says.
That was this sort of era, wasn't it?
Yeah, Beano advertising.
Yeah, Beano advertising era. So yeah, I definitely got on board with Independence Day when it came out, and Godzilla, of course. Do you remember the KFC puppets of Godzilla?
No.
They did these crazy like puppets that you could get, and I had like, I'm not going to go into it now. No, maybe that's for an episode about Godzilla down the line. Yeah. But yeah, his first big one was Universal Soldier, I think.
Oh, okay, I have. That's Kurt Russell, isn't it?
Yeah,
I have seen.
Is it Kurt Russell? I don't think it is.
Oh, is it Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Jean-Claude Van Damme and Universal Soldier.
Right.
Yeah. We'll have to talk about Kurt Russell in a minute because it's Kurt Russell.
It's Kurt Russell.
But anyway, let's not jump ahead of ourselves. So he's basically the big sci-fi blockbuster guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Sci-fi blockbuster guy, Roland Emmerich.
Yeah, so Universal Soldier, what did he follow up with?
So then he did Stargate in 94, 96 Independence Day, 98 Godzilla. He did The Patriot as well.
Really? I thought Mel Gibson directed that.
2000, it says The Patriot.
All right.
Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, right.
10,000 BC.
So he sort of pivots into like a disaster movie guy.
Yeah. This is a sci-fi blockbuster. That's what it was designed to be, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was, I think. It was quite successful, wasn't it?
Yeah, eventually. I think it took a little bit of time because it was like a sleeper hit.
Oh, really?
Because it kind of infiltrated the box office.
That is interesting because I wondered why they didn't do more movies and then like 8 years later they do a TV series. And presumably that's why.
Yeah.
Because it feels sequel ready, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's got that kind of thing to it. And obviously knowing all of the mythology they built upon it with SG-1, it is, like you said, a sequel ready.
Yeah, because all you need, and I think what they do in the series is, we found another Stargate, let's go look around the universe.
Yeah. New coordinates, let's go there.
Exactly. And that's exactly what you would do in a sequel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Turns out there was another one, let's go again. Easy. Let's get on to the cast then.
Okay.
So Kurt Russell is cool.
Yes, as always.
Yeah.
I've been on a real Kurt Russell binge recently.
Have you? What else have you been
So I watched
into?
Escape from New York.
Oh, good.
Brilliant. Big Trouble in Little China.
I've never seen that.
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic.
Who directed that?
It's another John Carpenter one. And then also I watched The Thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah, so that was...
Looking forward to talking about that at some point. Yeah. Is this kind of on the end of Kurt Russell's, the first phase of his career, the action hero Kurt Russell phase? He's going to come back in the mid to late 2000s as a sort of rugged, aged, cool guy in like Death Proof.
Yeah.
But it feels like I can't think of many other films in
mainly because he's cut his hair and he's lost his power.
yeah.
He's just like Samson, isn't he?
Yes.
I was very shocked by his haircut in this. I didn't even know it was Kurt Russell. Even though I've seen this 100 million times, I don't think I ever connected the dots. Just because his hair is so radical.
Well, speaking of people who are hard to recognise because of their hair,
I know what you're going to say.
James Spader.
Yeah, James Spader.
Who's like a sort of handsome nerd in Daniel Jackson.
James Spader did not want to do this film as well.
Really? Why not? Don't do it.
He read the script and he was like, oh, he didn't like it. He thought it was ridiculous. But I've heard him in interviews, and what he says is he looks at acting like any other sort of labour job.
Fine, yeah.
Sometimes you've just got to do the job to get the money.
Yeah. And James Spader in 1994 is not a superstar who can just pick and choose projects, can he? I suppose.
Yeah. And I think he had a lot of dialogue with Roland Emmerich during the filming saying, what's my motivation? Blah, blah, blah. And I don't think he got much from Emmerich in terms of that.
I respect that. I mean, that's good. Like, it is a job. It's his job. He's got to do it. But he's also treating it as an art form. He's trying to get something out of the director and trying to do something with it and not getting anywhere with it, which would be very frustrating. But yeah, that is right, isn't it? It is a job. You've got to do stuff you don't believe in.
Yeah, and I mean, Kurt Russell was the same as well because they kept sending the script to him. He kept going, no, I won't do it.
Well, now he can turn down a film in 94, I think.
So it was like back and forthing again quite a lot until eventually he was like, okay, I'll do it. Did you recognise the guy who plays Ra?
No.
He's from The Crying Game.
I've never seen that.
I won't say anything more then. But
I know what happens because it's like one of the most famous twists in cinema. Yeah.
Little bit Crying Game.
So does he play a character whose gender is
you know
non-specific?
Exactly where,
right. Okay. That's interesting because that's a big part of his role in this, isn't it?
Yeah, because he only did he did that and he did this and then he left the film industry and didn't act again. I think he found the sort of attention he got from doing The Crying Game a little bit much. So he got like a nomination after it and all this kind of stuff. And he was like propelled to fame, did this, and then kind of faded out.
I wonder what people like that do. I wonder if they go into like stage acting and just stuff that won't attract the attention, or do you think they just pivot completely out of that career and just get a job in an office or whatever?
Maybe. It must be weird though, being the person in the office who was in like a big major film.
Yeah, jokes about like Ra all the time.
So we should probably talk a bit about the actual film itself then as well.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of links to the past, and the topic of this particular episode is history in space.
Yeah, space travel's kind of, it's completely interwoven into the history and like historical iconography, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're using the ancient past to evoke like an alien world, because the ancient past is so alien to us, even though we know a lot about it, but it still feels like a completely different world. And we don't really know what it would look like, what it would feel like to step out of a pyramid into a desert and, you know.
Yeah, and it's that sort of, it's exactly like you're saying. It's like stepping onto a new planet. And I think when you look back at history is just as exciting as looking forward sometimes.
Yep.
Because when it's so far back that you, like you said, you have no idea what it was like to live in that time, it seems completely alien. And sci-fi has a lot of aliens.
Yeah. And when we get into, we'll be talking about time travel in another series, but there is that idea that when you're going on a sci-fi adventure, you can blast off into distant space and go to a mad alien world, or you can jump in a time machine and go to the ancient past and look at dinosaurs, and it'll be like a completely different alien world.
Yeah. And I think I've spoken about this before, the program Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely this is
basically,
feels a lot like that.
This is fodder for that.
Yeah, and that was like early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were into all these theories, but that show like really mainstreamed it and really made it a bit of a joke to be into that kind of idea.
Yeah, because they basically just pick any sort of ancient civilization, and then they would go, oh, well, how were they able to do this? That's impossible. Must have been aliens.
Aliens did it, yeah.
Aliens,
yeah.
Every time.
Isn't that the plot of, that's the plot of the fourth Indiana Jones film as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's aliens.
Yeah. They
when
made
in doubt, it's
crystal
aliens.
skulls for the Mayans or something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, so the main premise is they find this, they're in Giza, and
in like the 1920s, it's like
in the
a
1920s.
Exorcist, Indiana Jones type vibe, isn't it? At the start.
Yeah, all of those kind of films come mixed into that beginning bit.
Then it jumps forward into present day, being early 90s, and James Spader's giving a lecture to a hall full of dissenting scientists, which really reminded me of, a little bit Trip to the Moon, but more Frau im Mond, where, you've got this scientist who's got these crazy ideas about what we can do with technology or whatever, and a whole room full of respected scientists just going, you're full of crap, you're crazy.
Yeah, and they all leave, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, poor James Spader at the beginning.
But he's right.
Yeah.
He gets drafted in by the military, and they're going to get him to decipher this code, and he's walking in, he's scrubbing the stuff off the blackboard, and he's like, yeah, this isn't it. There is one bit that, when he's like doing the translation stuff and the guy's getting mad at him, the guy who is like a comedy guy.
He's in so many things, but I can't think of any of them. He's one of those actors.
He's in Spin City. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
That was his like longest running thing, I think.
Yeah.
But he's a comedy guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like getting grumpy with him. But what is it? There's one that he translates. So he's translating a load of stuff and he's changing the translations. It's Stargate, not Stairway to Heaven.
Stairway to Heaven or something like that, yeah.
But there's one he changes that's like, the translation they've got is for eternity. And he crosses it out and goes, that should be for all time. And I was like, come on, Daniel. Those things mean the same thing. You're being a dick.
You're
at this
wrong.
point.
It's got to be this sentence
It's actually
structure.
for all time.
Yeah, the translation thing's funny as well, because the title Stargate got translated. Obviously, when they put it out in Mexico,
Yeah.
they translated it as, I'm not going to pronounce this right, La Puerta del Tiempo, which translates to the Gate of Time. So everyone thought it was a time travel film over there when they first started watching it.
Yeah, studios just do not give a fuck
do
about
not
translations, do
care.
they?
But yeah, how ironic that a film so steeped in these kind of translations of different cultures and different words gets it all wrong in a different country.
Yeah. So he decodes it, and that's what enables them to activate the Stargate. There's a very, like I said, it's the most iconic bit of the film is where they first boot up the Stargate.
Yeah.
And it creates a sort of vertical wall of water that explodes out. It's so cool. Do they do that every single time on the series? Do they do the explosion-y thing?
I don't think they do the explosion-y thing.
Yeah.
It becomes just like liquid, like water.
Yeah, sure. It felt a lot like all of the blast-off scenes, the countdown scenes we've seen before. You've got your mission control room facing the Stargate. But it most reminded me of Contact because it's built like a mission control takeoff scene, but we're looking at a really unconventional thing. It's not a rocket and it's not going to blast off, but we're still counting down and something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the first time you see it, you don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we're still sort of treating it the same way as like a rocket ship lifting off, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And it's, again, like Contact, it's the use of a wormhole.
Yeah. Yeah, very similar to that, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I was looking this up because I know I got wormholes and black holes really confused last time when we were talking about Interstellar.
Well, it was confusingly explained in the
confusing. But yeah, so a wormhole or an Einstein-Rosen bridge is... So the simplest way to explain the wormhole is something I've never really thought about. But so basically it was Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen who came up with this idea. So the name wormhole compares the universe to an apple.
Okay.
And a worm boring through it to reach a point to the other side. So I never equated wormhole with an actual worm before. I don't know why.
No, I'd never thought about it.
Yeah,
But no,
but
I
that's
wouldn't
the
have
actual sort of like analogy for it.
Oh, cool.
Is you've got an apple, which is the universe, and a worm's going through it.
And in this, the Stargates are fixed points at two sides of that apple that you can activate and go through. So it does feel, it is similar to Contact. We have another sequence where we're sort of flying through that wormhole in like first person view, and it's quite surreal.
Like a theme park ride going up and down.
Yeah. Which they do in Contact as well. I had to keep reminding myself that Contact actually came after this.
Yeah, because that was 97, wasn't it?
It's like a theme park ride. A tiny bit of 2001, you know, where the stars start to kind of compress.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
go into a line. It felt a little bit like that, but they don't go very far with it.
And you know the actual scene where they go through the Stargate and their faces pop out?
Yeah.
So that's actually shot in water, but it's reversed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So they've just submerged their faces.
I love that effect. Like a lot of people do that effect. You see it in like music videos and stuff, like reversing someone going into water. It just looks cool.
Yeah.
Someone coming out of water dry. It's such an easy thing to do, but it always looks great on film.
Yeah, because it's the familiar, but it's tweaked, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got that like surreal edge. It's got another similarity to Contact that I quite liked, which is that they're kind of deciphering a code from space to get them into space. And similar to Interstellar as well, although that was coming through time, across time because of gravity. Didn't understand it. But that message kind of getting them into the stars, wasn't it? It had those similarities as well.
General West, Jackson has identified the seventh symbol.
Go ahead.
Programming seventh symbol into computer. Chevron 1 is holding. Chevron 1 is locked in place.
Power output at 23%.
Also on the topic of the Stargate, so this was an idea that Emmerich had years ago when he was like at film school.
Oh, right.
He said, wouldn't it be amazing if under the pyramids there was some sort of spaceship that they found? And obviously it got developed over time.
Right, so he is one of these like old school ancient aliens conspiracy guys.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
But also in the original sketches of it, or the original sort of planning of the Stargate, it was going to be all black. But then they looked at it and it just looked like a giant tire. So they were like, no, we can't do that. We've got to sort of tweak it. So that's why it's all metallic and cool.
Yeah. Well, good, because it looks great.
It looks so much better than a tire.
I could see it working in all black because you can do a bit of a monolith, 2001 monolith reference with it. But yeah, I also see how it would just look like a tire. So the wormhole is the primary means of space travel in this film. It's a really useful narrative device. It's the exact same way they use it in Contact. It's very useful to get contemporary, present-day human characters far enough into space to encounter some crazy alien worlds, isn't it? Because you don't need any futuristic technology, or rather the futuristic technology is just sort of plopped in the characters' laps and they've just got to activate it. So there's no faster than light travel involved. It's basically instantaneous. Contact's wormhole is a lot more of a wild ride, isn't it? How does it work in Stargate? Because like you said, it is like a roller coaster, but it's also kind of supposed to be instantaneous, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that roller coaster is just sort of, you get that for a couple of seconds while you're passing through. That's your experience of it. But it's supposed to be happening very, very quickly.
Yeah, because they pop out the other side almost instantaneously, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no sort of like time. They don't go into like if there's a time differentiation or anything like that.
Yeah, they're not flying through a wormhole.
Yeah, and it's not like in Contact where she's gone for a second, but in that time she's been gone for like 18 hours or whatever it was.
Yeah, when they come back. They never make anything of them coming back, do they? Because the film actually ends with Kurt Russell going through, and we get that sequence again, but he never actually pops out the other side.
Yeah, because all the fun's done by then.
Yeah, but also, again, that's where your sequel picks up, right?
Yeah.
He gets out, everything's on fire, everyone's like, oh my God, Jack, aliens have been here. You know?
See, that's what could have happened.
Yeah.
So talking about Jack, Kurt Russell.
Yep.
Do you think he should have been put in charge of that mission in the first place?
It's pretty weird when they go to his house and they're like, you've been reactivated.
Yeah, and he's got long hair.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And
he's sitting there in absolute trauma.
Yeah.
With a gun in his hand. Clearly his child, we can clearly see his child has passed away.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting in the room holding a gun.
And it looks like, as the film goes on, you find out, you basically put it together that his son killed himself.
Yeah, with his gun.
Which is dark.
Yeah.
And then they've just reactivated him.
Yeah,
put him in charge of the mission. Fantastic, he'll be fine.
No one's getting reactivated.
No,
in that situation.
Yeah.
They're all like, I got the impression he's a bit of a war hero or something, right?
Yeah.
Because people recognize him in the base and they're happy to see him, and it's like a big deal that he's back. So he's got some military clout. That's how he's found himself reactivated and in charge of this mission. But yeah, why was he put in charge? We're not told of any particular expertise that mean he's the guy to lead a mission through a wormhole, right?
Yeah, he's just sort of, I don't know why they got him in the first place. I mean, he's great.
Well, I don't know what's revealed about his past in SG-1, but here's a pitch for you. Jack O'Neill prequel series, he was always involved in like Black Ops, alien-related missions, all through his career. That's like his whole expertise. That's why he was selected. He's the only guy equipped to go through a wormhole because he's been fighting aliens his whole career.
I mean, yeah, that would make sense.
Paramount or whoever owns this,
just give
me.
Matt a call.
Yeah, email the Journey Through Sci-Fi at gmail.com. Or just send a check and then do what you want with it. It's fine.
Just send us a check.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he is a fairly unreliable guy for this mission. But he gets it together, right? He
does get it together. And because all the military guys seem a bit unlikable at the start.
Yeah, I really liked the way they dealt with them in the film. I was quite surprised, actually.
Yeah, because they seemed unlikable, but they were more sort of rounded by the end of it.
Yeah, they grow. They all grow. They're not big characters, but they're well realised and fleshed out to the appropriate amount for some sort of background.
Although I could not get over the guy from Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah, French Stewart.
Yeah.
His first line, because you don't see him up close until they're setting up the camp, and then you get a close up of him saying something, and you hear his voice. He's doing a much deeper voice than Harry, but it's unmistakably French Stewart. He's also like, he's not like a muscly army guy.
He's not. And all his mannerisms as well, and he does like the blinking
Harry, yeah,
thing.
he's got the eyes. Yeah, that must just be him. I thought that was a character thing for Harry. Yeah,
that took a bit of getting used to.
Yeah,
but I think he's one of those people who you instantly know for one particular role.
Yeah,
and then you can't get that out of your head sometimes.
Do
But
you know what's so interesting though? Because we talked about John Lithgow in the last episode for Interstellar, and because he's such a good actor, he can do Dick from Third Rock from the Sun and like the bad guy in Cliffhanger, and it all works, and he's great. French Stewart, I don't know, I don't want to slag him off because he's amazing in Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah.
But he's never got out of that, has he?
Yeah, it's weird. It's just, and then to be in this military role, like you said, just seems like complete
weird
left
choice.
field.
Was he already actually? Would this be during Third Rock from the Sun, or is this even maybe before Third Rock from the Sun?
It's 94, so
I think Third Rock hadn't even started then, or it would have been really early days. As in, like, this is before he is just solely recognisable for playing Harry. It was 96 that Third Rock from the Sun started, so this is before he's even typecast.
Oh, so
for
he
being
was the
Harry.
military guy back then.
He was famous for being the military guy in Stargate.
Wow. So this alien planet they're on, it's basically Egypt, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Egypt with a space camel.
Yeah, we see the space camel straight away. It's very Star Warsy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the space horses we talked about in the Star Wars episode.
Yeah, but more animatronic.
Yeah, and that's actually a horse with stuff put on. Yeah, apparently.
That's horrible.
Yeah, I know, it's really disturbing.
What, a horse with like a big mask on its head?
Yeah, I read somewhere that's how they did it, and some shops it's a dog.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, not very comfortable for that poor horse.
They don't need that.
No, but then this is the thing with this.
Cheaper, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is like there's a lot of visual effects in this as well, as opposed to loads of CGI. They could have just overwhelmed the film with CGI, but there's quite a lot of like SFX in there.
Is there? What else is then?
Well, it's just in terms of like the costumes.
Yeah, the helmets are mostly practical.
They could have just been some sort of CGI thing, and the spaceships. And the way the guns move, that's all sort of like, it's all animatronic.
I like the guns, actually. Yeah, you're right. The way that, you mean the staffs that kind of, they've got like a tulip bulb that splits open into four when it's ready to fire. That was quite cool.
And they could have used CGI for all of the extras.
Yes.
But they've got so many extras.
There is a scene at the end where they're all pouring down over the hills that I really liked. Because I really like it just any time in a film when like there's an army that looks like it's full of real extras. It looks great.
Yeah, it's a bit Lawrence of Arabia, isn't it?
Although you could they run out of extras. Like the shots don't last very long, and you can tell that it's like
they've definitely run out of extras by the end.
The extras are very widely spread out, but they're only like 6 rows deep.
Yeah, so I think the reason for that is because it was so incredibly hot where they were filming.
Yeah.
They had loads of people turn up for the first few days, and then people would just dwindle. And it just became less and less people turning up to work because it's just too hot. And they
people
can't
are
be
just
asked.
like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm just an extra now.
Yeah, fair enough. Probably how I'd approach things.
But yeah, this mix of the ancient Egyptian style of architecture and mythology in there, and this weird futuristic space technology is a really nice sort of mix in this.
Yeah.
And I think the whole premise for the film is a really nice idea. The idea that ancient Egypt is connected to this alien race and all of the stuff that's going on in the film and how it's sort of interwoven.
Yeah, and the premise is that our entire civilization is dependent on the intervention of the aliens. Is that right?
Yeah,
because Ra came to Earth and accelerated human development through his sort of technological knowledge, but then we overthrew him and booted him out of Earth and carried on our own path.
Yeah, and then he went off to another planet and then started getting more people on there to build more technology and mine for this material that he's looking for.
That's very vague, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the deal with the material?
So it's the stuff that he makes the spaceship out of and all of his technology.
And the Stargate,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
But it's also it makes explosions bigger, is the technical way of saying that.
Fine.
Yeah.
Wait, if the Stargate's made of that, how did the Stargate get to Earth?
Well, he would have flown on his little pyramid spaceship.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good, very good.
Well, who made the pyramids? Aliens.
Aliens.
And then the pyramids aren't actually spaceships, like the actual pyramids.
Our pyramids.
Yeah, but they're like docking bays because the pyramid in the film where they land in the Stargate. It's like a docking bay for the big spaceship pyramid. This sounds so mental.
Sounds
I mean,
cool.
this film is mental. But
So my girlfriend came into the room when I was about half an hour from the end.
Yeah.
And she was just visibly unimpressed by everything that was happening. She's walking in when I've got YouTube open because I'm trying to watch the subtitled scenes on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm all in like a fuss over that, and I'm getting frustrated. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I've got to get the subtitles on my computer so I can understand what's going on the TV." And then she's watching, and I've got like to line it up. It's like paused on a frame of Ra with his like the little boys that he's got.
Yeah.
And it just looks ridiculous. It's like one of those weird bits of the film. And she's just like, "What is this?" I was like, it's Stargate. It's like Egypt in space. It's cool.
I mean, that's what it is. And I do still think it's cool.
And then at the very end of the film, Jack and Daniel like are friends, and they're having like a friend's goodbye.
Yeah.
And I turned to my girlfriend and I went, "They didn't respect each other at the start of the movie." And she just went, "Yep." And then the credits rolled, and she was like, "When was that made?" I said 1994, and she was like, "Yeah, that sounds about right."
I mean, it is a film of its time, isn't it?
I think it's
But
timeless classic.
I still love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of that stuff. And I mean, there's not loads which goes on in the film when it comes down to it. They go to the Stargate, they free a civilization who are like enslaved by Ra,
Yeah.
and then by the end they blow up and kill Ra on his pyramid spaceship and then go back home. That's pretty much the ins and outs of everything that goes on.
Yeah. It does. It is good. And obviously Ra is a villain. He's enslaving these people, but there is a bit of a white savior complex to this film, isn't it? They're kind of,
Yeah.
it's another film with like an imperialistic attitude, very American military, going to space. Oh, I better kill this despot,
Yeah.
Desert Storm.
Because that's what they do. They just get there and then all they're doing is blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
They're not going there to explore this new world and find out what they can about it. They've got a nuke, so they can blow it up if it's all shit.
And that was the plan all along, right?
Yeah.
Or is it just a backup plan?
I think they were going to see if there's any sort of threat over there and then blow it up.
Yeah, and very readily nuke it. And
Yeah.
again, that feeds into why Jack is chosen for the mission, doesn't it? Because he's a liability and he's going to kill himself anyway. So,
God, that's so dark when you think about that.
Who do we know who might be willing to activate a nuclear warhead and then stand on top of it?
Oh, yeah, Jack.
Call Jack O'Neill.
Yeah, Jack in.
That does lead to a scene that is absolutely amazing in this film. You know when he's activated the nuke and it's only got 7 minutes and Daniel's like, "Wait, I've got an idea." And then Jack gets into a fist fight with a Horus guard guy.
Yeah.
I love that. Anytime there's a bomb with a timer, but the characters can't deactivate it. There's loads of bits where like he's got one hand on the bomb and then he gets knocked off and then he's like getting punched and all that. It's great.
So good.
Give my regards to King Tut, asshole.
That scene happens because of, we haven't talked about the teleporters.
Teleporters are really cool.
Yeah, and another completely like iconic thing from the Stargate franchise, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with that. It just looks so good. It's like levitating rings, but they kind of come down like a slinky and like sponge into the right shape.
Slinky is the only way you can explain it as well.
Yeah, and it looks really cool. And I think they only exist so that the film can get to that point where we can have a character decapitated by it.
Yeah,
Right?
so like I said before, the video which I had as a kid was taped off the TV.
Oh no!
I'd never seen the heads, like the decapitated head that gets teleported back up to Ra.
I hate that.
TV
edits.
Oh my God. But it was such a nice little surprise when I watched it this time round. I was like, yes.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really gory. You see like the bloody stem of the brain or whatever.
Oh. So this alien in Stargate is Ra,
Yeah.
like the Egyptian sun gods. And then you've also got other Egyptian references. So you've got Horus, you were talking about.
I think the guards have a Horus-styled helmet.
Yeah.
I think, and he's a half bird, half man, god or demigod.
And then there's Anubis as well, isn't there?
Is there Anubis is the main bad guy in the series?
Yeah.
and he's like Ra's brother or cousin. Is he in this as well?
Well, there's one of the guards gets called Anubis.
Oh, okay.
Because he's got an Anubis helmet.
Right. Is Anubis the dog?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord of the Underworld or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact they've got all of this mythology element in there as well, which is really nice. And we talked about in the first episode of this series about the mysticism of space.
Yeah.
And the way we'd look at, because the way that Dr. Jackson figures out about the Stargate and how to put in the right chevrons is he looks at an astrology magazine.
Yeah, it's pure chance, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's nice.
so he sees the astrological symbols, then works it out from there. So again, with this film, you've got this sort of mystical element about space interwoven into it. And that's quite a nice way of doing it. And in the other film we looked at, it does a sort of similar thing, doesn't it, with the mysticism and the space travel.
Yeah, so in The Fountain, they tie together the kind of mystical, weird elements, and there's a huge element of fantasy to it as well. And it's all tied up with the journey into space that the character's going on. Let's move on. Let's talk about The Fountain then, yeah?
Yes, let's start.
Is everything all right?
Everything's all right.
How's she doing?
She had a seizure.
Wait, I'm afraid.
It's been progress of work.
My conquistador, always conquering.
We tested the substance. There's hope.
Your wife needs you.
This is a disease. And there's a cure. And I will find it.
So Darren Aronofsky, I think I used the word poetic in the intro, which is quite a pretentious word to use when talking about film, but I do think that that's what he's doing with his films, right?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting comparison, and to understand that sense of poetry, it's good to look at a film like Stargate. And when I say that Roland Emmerich's films all look the same, I like it, but it is a very rigidly structured Hollywood studio presentation, Hollywood studio mid-90s presentation of cinema and how actors are framed and how dialogue works. The Fountain is an extremely weird, strange visual movie where the plot, I mean, it's non-chronological.
Yeah, the
moves
narrative's in different sort of a different structure to what you're used to.
Which is how history is kind of woven throughout the film, because the historical elements are kind of just happening at the same time, and even beyond maybe what's happening in the future. It's very, first time you see it, really hard to follow, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those films which, again, it rewards repeat viewings. And I love films like that, when you can watch it again and you get something new from it each time.
Yeah.
And this is a film which I haven't watched this film for a long time. I think the last time I watched it was in uni.
Same, yeah.
So to watch it again was like, it was a rewarding experience.
Yeah, I agree. It rewards multiple viewings. I think the more times you watch it, the more you realise that the plot is actually very straightforward. I had it in my head that it was like a really confusing plot line with like different characters played by the same actor. I don't think that's the case now. I think actually there's only one character, that Hugh Jackman only plays one character at different stages and a fictionalized version of himself. But
I would agree with that reading of it as well. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about our readings and how you can view the film in a little bit. But staying on the topic of Aronofsky, what have you seen his other? I mean, you must have seen his other films.
I've seen most of his. Well, that's not even true anymore, because he's become quite prolific, and I haven't really kept up with him. I've never seen Pi. I'd really like to
Pi
see
is
Pi.
great.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we'll get a chance to talk about it on the podcast, because
Okay. Is it science fiction?
it's got, to me, it's got elements.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, we'll have to figure out a way we can sort of like weave that into the series or into a future series.
I've seen Requiem for a Dream once, and it's on my list of great film. Not really interested in ever seeing it again, because it's pretty grim.
Yeah.
Actually, my memory of Requiem for a Dream is that I watched that. I came home from the pub when I was a teenager, and it was on TV, and I watched it, like drunk, coming home from the pub. And then on another channel when that finished was Boys Don't Cry, the Hilary Swank film.
You had quite an evening watching that double bill.
Like, miserable. Yeah. And I never want to see either of those films again, but they're both great. They're both amazing.
Why would you do that to yourself, though?
I think, actually, to be honest, similar way that you in primary school were getting up early, me as a teenager, I was staying up like to 4 a.m. just watching films.
Just watching as many as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing it on the other end of the day and older. But
fantastic. Yeah. Love that.
What else is Aronofsky?
So we did The Wrestler.
That's so good.
Yeah, The Wrestler.
I think that's better than Black Swan.
Yeah, I really love The Wrestler as well.
Yeah.
I've only seen Black Swan once, but I did enjoy it.
It is good.
I think I've seen The Wrestler a couple of times now.
They're a very good pair, and I think he consciously made them as a pair because the way that he shoots the characters and frames the characters and the kind of personal journeys they're going through are very similar. Both amazing. I slightly prefer The Wrestler.
Yeah.
And then more recently, he's done stuff that I haven't seen. He did a Noah film, didn't he?
Yeah, that's a bit sci-fi.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You wouldn't expect it, but it's very strange. It's got weird rock monsters and I think aliens are involved somehow. Again, I've only seen it the once.
Is it? It's based on a graphic novel, is it? Maybe. I don't know. Could be making that. I haven't seen it.
I think it might be. So there was that, and then Mother's.
I really want to see that.
Mother's good.
Yeah.
But a lot of the films that we mentioned previously, which I think we've predominantly seen, they're all about obsessions, aren't they?
And The Fountain is absolutely an obsession film.
And that's got a recurring theme for Aronofsky, this people obsessing over certain things.
Right.
And that, I think, is the core of this and the message of the film.
I think so too. Yeah. Space is like a backdrop for Hugh Jackman character's obsession.
Space and the sort of like technology, sci-fi aspect of it.
Yeah, it's all just like there's various canvases onto which he paints his obsession, and the journey into space is just, it's like the logical extension of all of his obsession. It's just like, how far can I take things? Well, the furthest I can take it is flying a spaceship into a nebula the other side of the galaxy. And he does.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
It's very beautiful. What do you know about the way it was shot?
I've heard bits and pieces, but you might know a little bit more than me.
I know it's macro photography because our friend of the pod, Jack, I think was interested in this when he was doing his student film, because he did a really interesting student film using footage from his own eye. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
It was really cool. And I think something similar is used in The Fountain because it is macro photography, but I can't remember what it's macro photography of.
It's of cells, isn't it?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's really macro. It's like microscopic, which is really interesting that's how you present the scope of the universe and the size of the journey they're going on, or he's going on rather.
Yeah, because apparently he used, if I'm remembering this right, he used like tiny Petri dishes and recorded the chemical reactions going on in them.
Yeah, that's it. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so he said that's
how you get the swirling vortexy stuff.
Yeah, and it kind of like, if by doing that and not just using CGI, it kind of makes it a bit more timeless.
Yeah.
Because it's a real thing that's happening and you can't recreate that in the same way in CGI.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And comparing it to Stargate is interesting because there's not a huge gap. It's 12 years?
Yeah, it's not too long. Which 'cause this was 2006.
Yeah, grand scheme of things, not a huge gap between these films. And yeah, you could have, I would say in 2006, conventional wisdom would be just do the nebula with CGI. We've got computers, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And there is a load of CGI because he's floating in like an orb. Mm-hmm. But the backdrop has to have that grand scale and it has to feel quite real, doesn't it?
Yeah. So what would you say are some of the core themes of this film then?
So obsession's the main thing.
Yeah.
But there is that connection to history and nostalgia. He's obsessed with, his main obsession is beating death.
Yeah.
And with good reason. So Tom's wife, Izzy, has a brain tumor and it's fatal. She's not getting better. It's very, very tragic, isn't it? Because the most tragic thing is that she's accepted it and he won't.
Yeah.
And it's really heartbreaking. And that does lead to some of the best sort of heartbreaking moments of the film where she's there, she's ready to go and he's not ready to let her go. and he's missing out on time with her in that run up.
Yeah, because a lot of it is about that dealing with your own mortality, and it's trying to get Hugh Jackman's character. You want him to live in the present and live in the moment a bit more, like Rachel Weisz. And so all of that's in there, the sort of theme of griefs throughout it. But it's this core thing of life and death, learning how to deal with death.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the main thing, because the film is called The Fountain, and it's like the fountain of life is kind of what it's going for with that title. And the film goes into that in further detail throughout.
Yeah, because it presents the tree of life as well. The tree of life is kind of like living in the fountain of youth, I guess, the fountain of life, when we see it in the fictionalized telling of Conquistador, who goes on a quest to find it in...
Thomas,
yeah.
So there's Thomas, Tommy, and just Tom?
Tom Creo.
Tom Creo.
Tom Creo is present-day Hugh Jackman. Tommy's the spaceman.
Space Tommy.
And Thomas is the Conquistador. And it's interesting because he's credited as that in the end credits. He's credited as 3 characters, which may increase your confusion on first viewing of how many characters you were watching Hugh Jackman play. You've got your present day guy. You find out a bit into the film that the Conquistador you saw at the start is actually a character written by his wife. And obviously she's very influenced by their relationship. The Conquistador is a fictionalized version of Tom. But yeah, I mean, watching it knowing the whole plot, when you see Tommy the spaceman, there's no question that he's Tom, the present day guy. He's got we see him tattoo the wedding ring silhouette because he loses it. And then we see Tom do that in present day.
And you've got the pen, which he uses to tattoo himself. And it's the same pen that he gets when he first inks himself in the present bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all old and haggard by the time he's space monk.
Yeah. And a lot of that's told out of sequence in the film. So certainly the first time you see it, you're not getting all of the information at the right time.
Yeah.
To understand. But yeah, there's no question that he's the same guy, right?
I don't know if there's no question though.
Why'd you say that?
Because there's certain things, because again, like I said before, there's lots of different ways you can read this film. And there's one line that Izzy says where she's talking about the book, and she says it begins in, was it 15th century Spain or wherever it is?
Yeah.
And then it ends in Shambhala. And then she points to that nebula. So that implies that the end of the book is up there.
Which could imply that the Tommy that we see in the space bubble is also a fictionalized version of Tom that he's written in his grief.
Yeah. So you could read it like that. Or it kind
and that's got as much validity if you're looking at the Conquista Thomas as a fictionalized version of Tom. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, but it's from that one little line.
Now I want to watch it again. Like that line breezed me by. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Mayans called it Xibalba.
Xibalba?
It was their underworld. The place that dead souls go to be reborn.
What are you talking about?
My book. I'm writing about it.
I thought it took place in Spain.
Begins there. Ends there.
I think regardless of what is real and what's fictionalized, the whole film uses different visual metaphors and different ways of telling the story to really good effect. Because again, like we said, it's about grief. It's about life and death. It's about dealing with your own mortality. And all those other aspects feed into that main theme.
Yeah.
So you've got these 3 different time periods. So what is Tommy doing in each of these time periods?
So the key plot to understand the film is the present day, the 2006 plot, right? Which is Tom Creo's wife, Izzy, is dying of a brain tumor. He's a medical researcher who has at his disposal, I think, seemingly hundreds of options of things to test on chimps who have brain tumors, convenient job for him. He's looking for a way to stop these brain tumors. They use a sample from a tree in like Central America, is that right? And it miraculously reverses the aging process in the chimp that he's tested it on, but the tumor, no sign of progress. And all of his colleagues want to like focus in on, like, they've just made the most incredible medical discovery of all time. And he's like, yeah, but that's not actually our job. We are here to research tumors. So back to the drawing board.
He gets really irate about it. Because obviously he's got all of this stuff bubbling under the surface. And he's so obsessed with trying to find this cure that everything keeps passing him by. And he misses out on time with his wife.
It's horrible. Yeah. It's really horrible.
And that's the bit that it keeps flashing back to, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Throughout the film.
Yeah, and the future Tommy, whether that is another fictionalized version of him or not, is haunted by that memory. So I guess taking the long view of the plot, what happens, my understanding of it is, his wife does die. He then, literally within days, they make, or it's less than that, it's like minutes, they've made the discovery that will halt death, basically. He then goes on to live a life, thousands of years?
Yep, that's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, because he now lives in a world where death has been conquered, but he cannot forgive himself. He grows a tree on top of his wife's grave, which is one of these tree of life plants. Yeah. And then he decides that he wants to take it to the nebula that they talked about as, when she was alive, to kind of, what's his intention there? Does he really think that she's going to come back to life, or is it more of like a sort of
bringing the tree back to life? It's strange because, again, it's not definite. It doesn't give you any answers in this film, really.
No, that's
it gives you. Yeah. I've heard Aronofsky describe it as a puzzle box, and there's lots of different ways you could put it together, and it's really sort of up to the audience to how they want to put it together.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But he said there's one definite way that it's supposed to work.
Okay.
But I mean, that kind of defeats the object a bit. So I'm just ignoring that bit, Aronofsky. I'm just using the puzzle box and anybody can decide what it is.
Well, I was so confident coming into this conversation that I was like, oh, it's much more straightforward than I thought. But you've really thrown a spanner into that with the idea that it might be part of the book.
Yeah. And then, see, she says it's a dying nebula as well.
Yeah.
So when he's going around in his space orb, and at the very end, he's dying and then making a new sun or something like that, or a new nebula.
Oh, I thought it was like it goes supernova. So it's shrinking. The star Xibalba is shrinking and dying, and then what happens at the end is he flies out of the space bubble in a smaller bubble closer to it, and he looks very sort of Eastern mystic.
Yeah.
He's sitting cross-legged in the way a yogi would, and
well, he's a space monk, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he got the shaved head. He's tattooing himself.
Does all the sort of like meditation and sort of Zen techniques.
Yeah.
He's doing some sort of martial arts in the stars, which is an amazing shot.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's nice. And then I assumed that the sun was going supernova, because I think is that what happens with a star? They shrink right down and then they
explode,
blow up.
Yeah.
I think over a very long, millions of years. That was what I thought might be happening, because he gets like blasted with light and enveloped by all of that and dies. And he's saying, I'm going to die. I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And he's like happy. It's an amazing moment.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die.
Together we will live forever.
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 It's taken that character, whatever form of character he is, it's taken him thousands of years to finally accept his own mortality.
Yeah.
And he does it in this spectacularly explosive way.
And to deal with his grief, because he must have been grieving his wife all throughout those years.
Yeah, he talks to the tree as if it was his wife.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense through about 95% of the film. You have to know what happens actually after the character's died.
Yeah, in order to get it. But they do lots of cutting shots, which are really nice as well. So when he's touching the tree and it's got like little hairs on it.
Yeah, they make that connection. Yeah,
because it cuts to the shots of the back of Izzy's neck and then him talking to her, and it's just really nice visuals like that. And did you notice all the chasing shots? So there's lots of different shots where each of the Toms are chasing after something.
Right.
So the conquistador, Thomas, he's charging off on his horse to go and find the Tree of Life in the sort of this Mayan civilization. And there's a shot like that, which is mirrored with the car shots.
So it's an aerial shot that's upside down.
Yeah.
And then as the car or horse passes under the camera, it flips 180 degrees. So it's the right way up and it's looking the direction that the car and horse are traveling.
That's it, yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
So they
great.
do that, and they do that with present day Tom.
Yeah.
And then with with Tommy as well. They've got a shot like that. I think there's a shot there as well somewhere.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
nice, yeah.
So all of these bits, and he's on a quest the whole time to find something to sort of like save his queen, his wife, this tree. He's trying to, and it's all these 3 different stories are so interlinked in that way, and sort of what he's trying to do. It's just, it's really, really something.
What's interesting, I guess, is that Thomas doesn't slot into the same narrative that the other 2 time periods work on, because he is sent on that mission by the Queen, isn't he? And I don't think Thomas is struggling to accept. Well, I guess he is, because he's desperately trying to kill the Grand Inquisitor or whatever the bad guy in Spain is called. Whereas the Queen has kind of accepted that, like, no, we don't do things that way. That, you know, that's not the right way to solve this. So I want you to go on this mission. But still, the quest is not really his own, is it?
Or it is partly because, I know she's orchestrated it all. But the reward is that he will marry the Queen at the end of it. So that's kind of his reason for doing it.
And actually, and he does become a bit obsessed and mad, doesn't he? Because all of his colleagues kind of turn against him on that trip, and they're like, this is a waste of time, and he ends up killing a few of them. And
then there's that moment in that part of the story where that Thomas and the future Tommy meet. So you've got the moment.
That's great. Very strange. Yeah.
So the Mayan who's waving the flaming sword, which is referenced at the beginning, with the words which come up.
So it looks like in the beginning of the film, the Mayan priest is about to kill Thomas before he is able to find the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
And then we cut away from Thomas's story at that point, and we don't get back to it until the very end of the film.
Yeah, and then suddenly this Mayan priest sees Thomas as the first man.
First father.
The first father.
But it's Tommy, the spaceman.
The spaceman.
Do you know what? That feeds in nicely with the idea that both of those, the past and future stories, are part of the same novel. Because that's the hardest bit that's the hardest bit of the film to understand, even when you feel like you've got a grip on the chronology of it. How the supposedly real character of Tommy is interacting with the definitely fictional character of Thomas.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, this whole film is pretty strange.
But that would make total sense if Tommy was just a character from later in the same novel.
Yeah, but the way Tommy's story is told, it's him. So he wakes up after the Mayan bit at the start. So he wakes up as if it was a dream, and he was remembering the story that Izzy told him.
Oh, yeah.
And then he keeps going back into moments of what we think of as the present.
Yeah.
So he turns, and it does that 2001 thing, which is brilliant. The moments where it transitions, and he looks one way, and then she's there, and then he looks again, and he's back in that time period.
Yeah, it's really nicely edited that he looks over his shoulder and he sees Izzy, and he's bald, he's Tommy, and he's having a conversation with present day Izzy. And then on a couple of cuts later, he's still Tommy and bald, but he's in Tom's office in the present day. And then it's a couple more cuts later, Hugh Jackman's got his hair back, and we are fully in the present day. Yeah.
So I think Hugh Jackman shaved his head for that.
Yep.
And a lot of his body hair.
He looks a lot like the aforementioned Jack friend of the show. Don't you think?
He does, yeah, he does.
2006 Hugh Jackman looks loads like Jack. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the guy who played Wolverine to shave all of his hair off as well.
Yeah.
It's quite a
I
transformation.
think he commits to quite a lot of roles, doesn't he? Didn't he? It's difficult to get massive and jacked like he does. But obviously, it's a good thing. Like, I'm sure everyone would want to. So I'm sure he's happy to like have a personal trainer and become a muscle-bound monster to be Wolverine. But like, he played Jean Valjean, and that's his physicality is completely different in that film, and he is willing to do these physical transformations. I think not like to a Christian Bale level, but I think Christian Bale is just a bit of a masochist. Like,
but he's been doing it for like he was a childhood actor as well, so he's just been raised with this style of acting and giving so much of yourself to it. Hugh Jackman came into acting later in his life, not for any discredit to him.
Sure.
But he sort of like hasn't had that chance to really ingratiate yourself into these roles in the same way, maybe.
I really like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, he's good.
He's a good actor, but he's one of those people that like, he's a bit Tom Hanksy, right?
Yeah.
He's a known nice guy. Whether it's true or not, right? It's a well-cultivated, nice man persona that he has. And it really does seem like a really great guy.
And he does everything, doesn't he?
Yeah. Great singer.
Yeah, singer, action star.
I think he recently performed at the O2. Didn't he do like a few nights at the O2 musically? Which is a bit weird, but he does have a good voice. So
yeah, well done,
enough.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
So going back to Space Tommy, what did you think about the actual space travel elements of it?
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Because it's completely divorced from any concept of space travel that we know from real life or that we've seen in any of the films we're looking at.
Oh, Explorers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is like, it's a space bubble. Yeah.
But you know what? Yeah, I do agree with you, though. It is so divorced from any idea of what you would usually have of space travel.
Yeah.
And it's like a big snow globe, isn't it, almost?
It is very snow globy. It's very an idealized little tableau. It's like a bonsai tree, right? Like you see all the roots, but they're contained roots. It's a tree in a bubble floating through space. It's great. And yeah, first viewing, even second viewing, you don't get much context on why there's a tree in space. Like we said, we know the tree is his wife.
Yeah.
They do the stuff with the bristles and the editing, and throughout the film you're under no illusion that Spaceman Tommy's wife is the tree.
Although I wasn't 100% sure at certain points, because I was like, so it's either the tree, because I'd forgotten about the fact that he plants the tree on top of where she's buried. So I thought it could have just been the original Tree of Life.
Yeah.
From the Conquistador.
Well, sure.
I mean, again, because it's so open to interpretation.
And halfway through the film, that's where your head's going to be at.
Yeah.
You know there's one Tree of Life in the film, and we've got a spaceman with a magical tree that's keeping him alive.
It's got to be that tree.
Yeah, it's very logical to make that link.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's 95% of the film. It's like the last thing that happens, we see him plant a seed on the grave. And then you've got to like, if you watch this in the cinema, the credits are rolling and you're like, racking your brain going back over the last 90 minutes, and let's just give a moment to give credit to the fact this is a 96-minute movie.
I knew you would love that.
Absolutely love. I texted you when I was starting to watch it about how happy I was that it was just a tight 90 minutes.
It was, and it works so well as a 90-minute film.
It couldn't be longer because you do have to scan back over everything you've just seen and make sense of it when it ends. And any longer, you'd be like, I don't remember. Well, I would. I'd be like, I don't remember what I was doing 2.5 hours ago.
But yeah, that spaceship, though, the idea of that orb.
Yeah, it's
and
cool.
I know Aronofsky said it was an attempt to sort of move away from sort of button-pushing sci-fi aspects. Yeah. It's not technology in the way you usually know it. And I think if it was, it would distract from the themes and the visuals and all these visual metaphors that he's throwing into the film.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even the way the film looks, it's all gold and it's kind of dreamlike, and the lighting's all similar throughout the different stages. And also going back to Hugh Jackman, the way he plays each character is quite different, because when he's the Conquistador, he's quite powerful and menacing. And then when he's the normal Tom in the present, he's hunched over quite a lot because he's working and he's stressed out.
He's like this worn down, tragic, scientific guy.
Yeah. And then when you see Space Tommy, he's
a Buddha.
Yeah, he's like at peace with things.
Yeah.
He's kind of like at the end of his journey.
Well, he's not at peace, is he? He's still that obsessive guy, but he is. He's at a stage in his life where he's about to be at peace. He's become this monk, this Buddha, so he will be capable at the end of the film of achieving that peace. But yeah, he's blasted himself off in space because he's still obsessed and can't deal with it.
He's like how you imagine astronauts to be and how we've found them to be in some of these films. His performance is understated.
Yeah.
And we've seen that a lot with the astronauts because of the stress of being in space. You have to be a bit calm and collected in some ways.
Yeah, I wonder how much meditation feeds into like astronauts of today, but also especially like the Apollo missions, because it wouldn't have been a mainstream concept. But didn't they pump them full of tranquilizers? Didn't they give them a load of pills?
Did they? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, just to really calm them down.
I think that might have been a thing.
But nothing too hardcore because you've still got to operate,
they need to be on the button.
Operate the heavy machinery.
But I wonder how much nowadays, with the way that meditation is more mainstreamed into culture, and the benefits of it are, taken more seriously and recognised. I wonder if that feeds into astronaut training and stuff. And how would you meditate in space, like with your, bumping about all over the place?
Yeah, you can't usually if there's no gravity, you can get in that position that Space Tommy's in.
Kind of, but aren't you always... Wouldn't you just be sort of very slowly drifting? So if you get in a good meditation zone...
It's just going to hit the console.
And then you bonk your head,
That's why you need an orb.
You do, yeah, exactly, yeah. They've got it... Tommy's got it right, yeah.
So what aspects do you think make this a sci-fi film?
It's got some nice, like, mad science, right?
Yeah.
It's got a bit of that, which I actually forgot about until I was watching it this time. But he does go on this fantastic voyage, doesn't he? That feels
whether
very
or
much
not
like...
it's in his head or if it's a fictionalized story or if it is a real thing that's happening, it's that sci-fi science fiction part of the story, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, do you think that there's the story of the Tree of Life has a science fiction element to it? It's biblical. It's mostly biblical. But if you try and fit that into a real world narrative, does it become a bit of a sci-fi story? You've got this plant with life-giving properties and it's being exploited by scientists. Well, it's being exploited by a conquistador.
Yeah.
But then later in the story, it's being exploited by scientists to create medicine and change society.
Oh, absolutely. And if this tree was growing, it would be a biology kind of science, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you'd have that aspect to it. So I think you don't always think about that when you think about science fiction. You think about the physics of it and chemistry, and you think about those kind of sciences, but sometimes you forget about the biology aspects of it.
Yeah.
And the idea of something which can make you live longer and bring back your youth, the fountain of youth, the tree of life. That is largely a sci-fi concept.
It feels sci-fi. It can be worked into sci-fi. It's usually used for more in a fantasy setting, isn't it?
Yeah. And this does have like that fantasy aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
But I think they merge really well in this.
Yeah.
And if you're not into any of that as well, which I doubt anybody listening to isn't, you've got this core story of this guy dealing with his grief, and it's just so moving. The fact that his Rachel Weisz, Izzy wants Tom to be in the moment and enjoy her last moments with her.
Yeah.
But he can't do that. He's constantly trying to fight death and conquer it.
To his own detriment.
Yeah. And then he misses out on all the important moments. But whereas Izzy is just so accepting of it. Ellen Burstyn says this one line at the funeral when Izzy's being buried. And she says, most people leave this life the same way they come in, kicking and screaming. But Izzy didn't. She was totally at peace.
She had grace.
Yeah, she had grace. And I think that's really poignant because most people do. When nobody wants to die, do they really?
Yeah.
and you are sort of kicking and screaming. You don't want to go. But this idea that she was totally at peace with it was just, it's really powerful.
It is powerful, and it's a tough thing to imagine, because that's kind of like when you talk about older people dying, you might say he had a good innings or whatever, and sometimes older people do have the opportunity to go out with some grace. It's a bit tougher to see a character as young as Izzy, but she does. I mean, Ellen Burstyn's right. She does achieve that. She has that moment where she collapses in the museum, but she says to Tom afterwards, I wasn't afraid, I was... And he doesn't get it. He's like, yeah, you're really strong. It's great, yeah. And she's like, no, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was ready to go.
Yeah.
Do you think that... what do you think about Tommy 1,000 years later in space? Do you think he has that grace? And has he learned a lesson by that point?
I think by the end of it, he suddenly has that realization of he's ready to go.
Yeah.
And by doing that, he's giving the tree life, and he sort of sees the way Izzy was looking at it. It's like when something goes, something else comes along. And it's sort of that aspect of it. So I think he was ready by that point.
And he achieves the same grace.
Yeah.
But do you think he was right to do that?
To wait that long?
To wait that long, to fly to Xibalba, there's an interesting stuff to think about what society he belongs to. So we're assuming he lived for many hundreds of years in a world where people don't die, or do they die? Do they achieve grace and peacefully step out of the world? Is he right to fly this tree to Xibalba, to this nebula, and go on this ridiculous space quest or not? And I don't know if there's a right answer. I just want to know your thoughts on it. Like,
it's hard to tell, isn't it?
Because it's all driven by that same obsession that unquestionably, when we see Tom in 2006, he is wrong, and he has that realization because he relives a sequence of his life, doesn't he? He goes back to a flashback that we've already had in the film where he shouts at his wife and says, leave me alone, I've got to do research. And then he's in the process of achieving that grace. He relives that moment, and he doesn't go with the guy from My Name is Earl. He chases after his wife and he walks with her in the snow, which is what she wanted.
Yeah.
Just in his memory, but he does do the thing that he should have done the first time.
Yeah, living in the moment.
Yeah, so he's achieved that grace, but was it all worth it, flying halfway across the galaxy to do that? And it takes this guy so much to just live in the moment. I think he does learn a lesson, but it's like, it takes a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, have you seen the end of The Good Place yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't say any spoilers.
Sure.
But that has a lot to do with the kind of stuff you're talking about at the moment.
The idea of coming to terms with death, which is what that show's all about, and it does it incredibly well in its final moments.
So I would suggest anybody who's sort of interested in that, give The Good Place a watch. Because
that is a good show about life and death. I do love it when film and TV can handle big concepts about death well. I think The Fountain does, The Good Place does, 6 Feet Under is, I think, the best TV series about death and coming to terms with it. And I think this film is a really good example of that. Yeah,
well, a bit of background on Aronofsky sort of writing this script. So he came up with it in 1999, apparently. So he just turned 30, and his parents had been diagnosed with cancer.
Oh my God.
So he'd been reflecting on human morality a lot.
Parents plural.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. And
obviously it's really full-on stuff to be dealing with. Anyone who's had that kind of experience, it is a lot.
Yeah.
But when he was he came up with this, both his parents overcame the cancer.
Wow.
But he began to focus on this concept of a young man saving a loved one from a life-threatening disease.
Yep.
And that's how all of this came through.
And what lens was he looking at through? Because this character who is trying to save his loved one, it's not, I don't know.
Yeah, well, he's obviously,
wrong.
But he's obviously looking at it from every angle because you don't want to let people go.
Yeah, yeah.
But sometimes you have to, don't you? You just have to look at it.
Yeah. And of course, Tom Creo is very relatable. I'm saying that he's wrong to have missed out on these moments with his dying wife, but it's completely relatable. You can see why. And, you know, if you were in that situation and you thought that your work could turn the whole thing around, you'd be up all night. You wouldn't, you know.
But his work actually could have turned it all around, but he just missed it by like a second.
It's literally seconds, isn't it? The scene where his wife dies, Ellen Burstyn comes in and says, "Good news, it works. We've sussed it." And he's got to run back into the room. Horrible. It's great. It's such a good scene.
Like all the moments with the spotlights when it's properly in focus, and when she falls, it's just even when you spoke about that moment, then it made me think about all the other visuals, and it's one of those films which you just remember all of the poetic ways that Aronofsky is telling the story.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and it is a complex film. It's a hard one to gauge. I know a lot of people which are our friends aren't particular fans of this film.
Yeah.
But I think it's grown. Well, I know it's grown as a cult film over the years since its release, and more people have watched it and taken their own things away from it. And I think this film is brilliant.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, we're on the same page about both these films, right?
Yeah, good. 2 fantastic films this episode.
Yeah. All right, I think that's everything we've got this week, isn't it?
Yep, I think that about wraps things up for today's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. Do tune in next time when we will be getting stranded in space. What film? There's that sound effect. What films are we looking at next week, James?
So we're going to be looking at Gravity.
Amazing.
And The Martian.
Cool.
I have not seen The Martian.
You're going to like it.
I'm very excited about it. You were telling me about the book as well.
The book's great. Yeah. The guy who wrote it's got a new book out set on the moon that I haven't read. Set on like the first city that's built on a newly colonized moon.
Well, we know lots about the moon now already.
Yeah, I'll be like, reviewing it. No, but the guy who wrote The Martian, Andy Weir, it's I think it's an incredibly well researched book. Like, he spoke to NASA a lot while writing the book, so you can have some faith that it's going to be quite scientifically accurate.
Yeah, and it's Ridley Scott, isn't it?
Yeah, and it looks like a really good Ridley Scott film. Yeah.
And of course, Gravity made a lot of waves when it first came out.
Yeah, I haven't seen that since I first saw it in the cinema.
No, I remember it being a very intense experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have some good discussions about those 2 next week. So if you want to find us, we are on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. It's at Through Sci-Fi Pod or at Through Sci-Fi. We've got a website, which is www.journeythroughsci-fi.com. Get in touch. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you.
Or do leave us a review. That's always helpful. Or tell a friend. Or tweet. Or whatever.
Yeah. Just give us a shout. We're about.
All right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Goodbye.